Have you ever felt anxiety or trauma you just can't explain? What if the answers aren't in this lifetime, but hidden in a past life? Today on the Cracking Backs podcast, we're joined by Dr. Jennifer Williams, a respected psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and university professor who pushes the boundaries of traditional therapy. This isn't witchcraft or imagination. It's neuroscience. It's healing. It's a profoundly real experience. Through powerful stories and groundbreaking insights, Dr. Williams will change everything you thought about or knew about trauma and the mind. Get ready to explore a dimension of therapy you never imagined possible. Oh, Dr. Jennifer Williams. It is so good to have you back on the show. That you have already astounded people with the first project that we worked on, the first podcast where people were coming up to me. And it's funny because we might have said a small moment about past life regressions, yet this show has become the whole show about past life regression because people find it so interesting. Thank you for coming back.
It is such a pleasure. Thank you for asking me to come back. I'm really excited to talk about this other piece.
Well, good. Let's get started. I want to ask you about, when someone hears, for those who don't know what past life regression is, what do you want them to really understand about what it is and what it isn't?
I think what's important for people to understand what past life regression is first of all, I look at it as a therapeutic process. I look at it as not just an experience, but something that it's like another therapeutic tool, a very gentle therapeutic tool that allows people to go back and access subconscious memories. And whether those memories are symbolic, energetic, or even literal, whatever that is, sometimes it appears that those symbols, those experiences are from times other than what we're living right now. And the goal of a regression isn't to prove reincarnation. From my perspective, it is to bring forward healing, clarity, and like emotional resolution. So I think that's really, really important. And, I'll get a question. And actually, I think, Dr. Terry, you asked me the question in the last podcast a little bit about how do you explain this to a skeptic? And I don't think I really answered that very well. I think I just went into telling stories, which I, sort of addressed it. But if I were to talk to a skeptic, and I talk to a lot of skeptics, a lot of people that they just hear past life regression and they just check out. That's not for me. Yeah. Like I come from the perspective that I'm not going to convince anyone of it. It's not my job to convince anybody of it. I actually, especially being in academia, I actually welcome healthy skepticism. That's great. It's interesting. I once heard Brian Weiss. So for those of you who don't know who that is or didn't hear the other podcast, Brian Weiss is really a pioneer in the field of past life regression therapy. He's a trained psychiatrist and came across an experience early in his career that shifted the paradigm for him. And he went into this whole track. He's written a lot of books on that. His latest book, I have it right here behind me, Miracles Happen. He wrote with his daughter, Amy, and a personal story of mine is actually in that book. And that's his latest book. Anyway, I once heard him explain to another scientist and researcher on an interview who was a big time skeptic for his work. And this was early. And what I heard Brian say stuck with me so much, because he said, look, to this scientist researcher, it is just as dangerous to blindly deny something as it is to blindly accept it.
That
Right?
was beautiful.
Yeah.
That says it all. Like, okay.
It does.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you
Wow,
don't have to
that's
believe
good.
in it. You don't have to believe in past lives to benefit
Right.
from the process. Just be open to it. Have a curiosity. Yeah.
So, you know, I've been meaning to ask you about this. And when I bring up the subject to other people, they go, oh, they do the, oh, come on, how do you know? So, but I want to know, how would you know that somebody's not just reciting some history that they read in a chapter in elementary school about, and then they put their life into that scene, versus how do you know if they're really accessing a memory from 5 lives ago?
Great question. Part of my answer is it doesn't matter. The other part of the answer is I've been doing this long enough to where I will tell you that it's the emotion that comes up from it that we work with, rather than trying to prove whether that was a video, a movie, a book they read, or any of that. And that would be fine if that was too. Because again, I'm a past life regression therapist who's also a trauma therapist, who is also a person that gets to the root cause. Many times that root cause is this lifetime. Many times we have anxiety, depression, PTSD, phobias that come from things that happened in this life. And by the way, usually under the age of 7. But when you go and look at that and resolve that and work through those, and it's still not working, sometimes the origins of that go further back. And so what I say is that other half of that answer is I'm actually less interested in the words, and I'm more interested in the emotion. So if a person is coming and saying, oh, I saw this tsunami happen in the news, and that's what's coming up for me, and I'm seeing that, if there is emotion behind that, then I'll use that as metaphor. I'll use that as symbolism. I'll use that to help us resolve the emotion. So for me, that's the difference. If you were to talk to someone else that does this work, they might have a different aspect. But, what emerges in a session often mirrors emotional themes that are happening in the client's life right now. And like last time I was saying, a lot of my work has to do with these themes, these threads that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the themes and pulling that through. So even if they go back and they say, I'm in a tsunami, I usually don't ask for the year unless I'm really seeing that I'm getting real vivid details or any of that. I will ask more for details to ground them in the experience. I'll ask them to use all of their senses, really try to bring forward the colors that they're seeing, if they see colors, or scent. Can they smell anything? I try to ground them in the 5 senses and the experiences, because, by the way, not everybody experiences the same way. And I think this is an important part of past life regression. I had shared last time that when I was in college, I tried to do it and have an experience. And what the regressionist was telling me to do was to go back and, what did I see? What did I see? What did I see? And I'm laying there going, black. I- what should I be seeing? And that was really, really what it was. And then that got me stressed because I'm a little type A. And so I wanted to perform well and I wanted to help her. So I wanted to like do the right thing. And that caused me a lot of stress. So I was not feeling safe. I was not feeling comfortable. I didn't know that I wasn't. But you know what was interesting? I strangely in this office was smelling fire. But that's not what she asked me. And I was gonna answer the questions. And so I never explored that it was fire. It wasn't until I got trained and later on that I don't ask, what are you seeing any longer? I ask, what are you experiencing?
Wow.
Because sometimes it comes in, especially if a person is very analytical, very left-brained, not quite believing in it, but they read about it, they're interested, their spouse said, hey, you need to go do this thing. I get a lot of that. So they don't feel like they have to perform. It will come in sometimes in snapshot pictures in their mind. It'll come in with scents. I'll say to them, if you see pink flying elephants, don't worry. I don't think that you're hallucinating. I'm not going to check you to see if you need to be in the state of Florida. We call it Baker Act, right? We're not going to do any of that. It for me just might be metaphor. Let's use that and see. And that what I'm hopeful that does is to help someone to feel comfortable and to go, okay, no matter what, I can share crazy, weird things and bring that up, right? So I'll say to them, what are you experiencing? Remember to use all of your senses. Now, if someone had said that to me, I would have shared, I smell fire. And that would have made me feel safe and comfortable to then a little bit explore further and further. Now, and I've used my poor husband, as an example of so many things. He came along the journey with me when I started to go through learning all of these complementary alternative, they call them integrative now, approaches. And so I would be sitting in fact, one of Brian's large, regressions, sitting in an auditorium, and I'm sitting there again, seeing black, nothing's happening. And then we emerge and, my husband is like, oh, I was back in the body. I was riding a horse. I was doing this. And this person came from behind me. And I was like, so we all have very different experiences. And so that's why I say, what are you experiencing? And just be okay that sometimes it will emerge as snapshot pictures, as if you're looking at it like watching a movie from above. Sometimes you'll be in the body, re-experiencing it like you're actually there again. Or sometimes, and this is for me what happens, you just intuitively know. That's why for me in my work, and also I am different, and I said this last time of why it's so important. I take this work so seriously. And people do come from all over the world to have a session or two with me. But every first session, every time I meet someone, we don't regress right away. It's a deep assessment. I am assessing lots of things. What are the things that they're dealing with right now in this lifetime? What help have they gotten for that? Are there contraindications to this work? Yeah, there is. If a person does have, a psychosis active psychosis or, a disorder, this is not the work that we want to do. And I very rarely come across that. But we sit and go through relationship patterns, fears, phobias, places of the world that they have just been drawn to, that they would love to go to, places of the world that when they think about just tightens their chest and they're like, oh, absolutely not. And I have no reason as to why. Yeah, I'll ask them, if you read, what's your favorite genre of book? Do you have favorite things that you're interested in? I've often seen clients that come in, it just gives me data to help me go back. But I've had clients that will say, you know what, I'm a little embarrassed to tell you this, but I love Harry Potter. I love magic. I don't know why. I don't do any of that now, but it just takes me away. And I've seen this often where they will go back and they'll go back to a time where they were a witch in a past life, and had, different abilities that were looked upon very negatively. So it's always just so interesting. I do a really in-depth assessment, and it also helps me to see, are they visual? Do they use their senses? I'll start by asking them to just simply close their eyes and recall their last favorite meal, a meal that they had recently that was just so delicious. And I'll ask them to describe that to me. How they describe it gives me insight to how they recall memories and emotions.
Wow, that's cool.
Hey, Jen, I got to ask you something. Well, obviously, during this story, I was a Navy SEAL or Delta warrior since I love those books. So obviously, I was some badass, samurai or something like that. Unfortunately, I put that badass samurai in a 165-pound body in the modern life. But I do want to ask you, what was that story when, you read the book, you had that little personal experience, but you're still a scientist, you're still a PhD, you're still in academia. What was that client that rebuted all that you sat back and went, I can't argue this, I can't fight this anymore? There has to have been, like Brian Weiss had his person. What was your person? And can you tell us that story?
Okay, so that will take me back to when I was really first doing this. And it was a woman that came in with really severe anxiety. She had been in therapy. There was just no amount of medication or therapy that really, really helped for her. And she came to me and she's like, can you help me? I said, let's go back. Let's go back in time. And this is really just me having read it, seen it, but not necessarily, I'm new to this. So not necessarily, like, I believe in it, but not really necessarily having seen how it made these connections. So I took her back, and she went back to a time where she was a young woman who had died in a fire. And she had been trapped and unable to escape. Now, let me tell you, since then, I can't tell you how many people I have had that had very similar experiences. So she goes back and she's seeing herself being trapped in that fire. Now, I was trained and taught not to be scared of that. Allow her to rise above it and look at it So she no longer has to feel any pain. She no longer has to feel anything else, right? But she can watch it. And I stayed with her and helped to take her through that feeling of feeling trapped and take her all the way through the ending of that to when she left the body. Now, and I'm just telling you therapeutically how I worked with that and how that was a little different. Had I not done that, had I stopped the session when the fear spiked, or if I got scared because here she is going, oh my gosh, I'm dying in a fire. Or had I just rushed past like that death and taken her to when she left the body, we would have missed the healing. So I kept her there. Again, not knowing if this was real or not. She saw something. It didn't matter. She was crying. She was terrified. She was shaking. Her eyes were closed. She was looking left and right, trying to say, like, I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I can't get out of here. I can't get out of this. I'm trapped. Allowed her to rise above the body so she can watch it from afar, so she doesn't have to feel that anymore. As soon as I said that, her body just relaxed. And I said, okay, now I took her all the way through, took her through that, took her through the moment of letting go, letting her go all the way to what's sometimes referred to as like the soul state, and having her go all the way to the other side, seeing that that was an experience. It is something that happened, and that she was actually able to get through it to the other side, see how she can get through it and have peace, feel detached from it, and look back onto it with clarity. So that's the piece where I took it through, and I was like, all right, to me, this is just sort of therapy. I took an experience like as if she had gone through a fire and felt trapped but didn't die in this lifetime. How would I do something like that therapeutically? But took her through all the way through to the other side. Now, the key here too is that it's important that the person feels safe in the body. You're going to hear me say that often. Everything is about feeling safe in the body, and that when we feel safe and we feel regulated, then all aspects of ourself can open up. So she is in a safe space. She's feeling okay. So that's how we're able to heal that. And I take her all the way through. When she emerged, she felt a lot lighter. She felt better. Her face, the skin color, like changed. There was even something that, like her affect, we talk about her affect, the way that the face shows up, and the emotions just looked a little different. But I didn't know if it worked or not, right? It was just like, okay, that was an interesting experience. Let's see what happens. So we made an appointment for the next week. And she came back and reported that she had been having daily panic attacks, daily, with medication. And she hadn't had one all week. That was the point where I was like, okay, okay, this is working. This is something that that can really help people get to the root cause. That's probably the first one. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think it's important to mention that you being trained clinically and having a spiritual space as well, you practice with a big tool belt, a variety of things. You know, we're delving into this aspect, but boy, I'll tell you, it's a skill to know which tool to use
Yeah.
on that patient, on what patient. And, it's funny because Dr. Terry and I, we specialize in the physical realm of health, and we have all those tools. But now I'm realizing it's what an advantage it is to have a vast amount of tools in your belt. That's pretty cool.
It's a great point. And I'll share when people come to see me, because some people come to me just to have the experience of past life regression. Um, I often find that when people are referred to me for a past life regression and they experience that, they end up coming back because they want to work on other ways of adapting and living in this world. Because I'll say this to you again, past life regression is a tool. You're right. And it's not for everybody. A lot of times, some of the trauma originates from this lifetime. Sometimes it goes further back. And for that's why I do an assessment, an hour-long assessment. And I tell everybody, the very first hour, the very first time you see me, we're going to go through this assessment, and then I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are. And sometimes I will tell people, I think we need to work through the trauma that you have in this lifetime before we go back and go further back. So therapeutically, again, remember, I see everything through a mental health psychotherapeutic lens. And I'll say to my clients, for me, there's 3 things that therapy does. First, we want to just be with what's there, reduce the negative, and then build up the positive. And a lot of times what happens is just being with what's there allows for that reduction of the negative. And a lot of times, because if you've ever had anxiety, real panic, clinical diagnosable anxiety, you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy. Depression. And if you're living with it for a long time or long enough, you'll do anything to kind of get through that. So once you start to see that alleviate, you're feeling good, you're feeling better. And then, you pop out. You're like, yes, this is so much better. But that is that third little piece for me that seals the whole thing up, which sometimes clients don't really spend the time doing because now they're feeling free from the negative. And that's building up the positive. That means learning what it's like to walk through life without having anxiety, without having a phobia. And that maybe doesn't take a lot of sessions. Maybe one more session, maybe a few more sessions, or maybe if you've been dealing it with your whole life, we've got to work on behaviorally walking through that if you've always been fearful of water. And now that's gone and you're okay. You no longer have, you have to tell your friends and family, we don't have to avoid going to the ocean. We don't have to avoid going on these things. It's a whole different way of living. So for me, the complete package is just be with what's there, reduce the negative and build up the positive. And that also correlates with a neurobiological perspective of understanding the nervous system and working with the nervous system and rebuilding the neural pathways and creating new superhighways of neural pathways that allow us to live freely for the rest of our lives without having this other stuff. So, to your point, the tools are important, but the assessment's even more important because I look at this therapeutically and not just as an experience.
Can I ask you? You triggered something in my head. What you just said. You said seeing the past life as a movie, so to speak. And we've had a couple of guests talk about mushrooms in Sea Asylum, where if they take it and they walk through it properly, it's like seeing their life as a movie without the emotional attachment to it. And we've heard stories about using it for that purpose, but it sounds like you can almost do it in another way. Can you explain, as a trauma therapist, how you can take this experience and make it more like a movie or a mirror, and how far back do you have to go? And can you talk about using this tool to kind of change that perception?
Another great question. I have a colleague that's actually doing a lot of research in that area of using psychedelics. Um, I have a slightly different perspective, so I will tell you I have some bias around it. And it's not necessarily something that I've fully gone into the research. I know it is a tool to use to go back, but there are side effects. And a lot of clients have been referred to me after going through some of these ceremonies without having a therapist there. And I have noticed that if they have unresolved trauma, that is exacerbated and brought up in a really scary way. And if they're not with somebody there that has helped them walk through that, and it actually can end up having very negative consequences for them. I cannot even begin to tell you how many people come to me after having had that. So what I will say is, yes, there's similarities. If we could just use hypnosis, or by the way, hypnosis is just a focused state of concentration. That's all it is. That's all it is. I can't make you say or do anything that you don't want to do. I promise I can't make you go rob a bank. I'd be a multimillionaire. I can't, make you buck like a chicken. There are stage hypnotists that do that. They look for certain things in people, and usually it's a person that doesn't mind getting up on stage and, doing that kind of thing. But really all it is just a focused state of concentration. So if we can use hypnosis and regression to go back and experience those exact same states without the side effects. And then, by the way, if you're with somebody who's trained in doing this and can walk through the trauma, when they access those traumatic events, then that person can do, ethically take them through the ending of that, so that they're feeling safe and no longer walking with that really scary part, and the negative side effects of that. So it is very, very similar to psychedelics, in terms of being able to access higher consciousness and being able to access unresolved parts of ourselves. I think, and again, I don't know too much, and if I had my colleague here who does research on that, she would probably, correct me a little bit. I think the psychedelics will get you there a little faster, but if there's trauma or unresolved trauma that shows up, that can be very, very scary for the person. And so that's why I sort of lean more towards caution with that, but you can access it. And it's so interesting. Everybody that I work with, that has either gone through that or knows about it or is thinking about doing it will say to me, this is very similar to the process of, when I went through a ceremony and I did this, but it seems a lot more gentle.
I think it's important to mention that in I guess you need a facilitator. Yes. To be able to help you navigate through the pain and the trauma, who knows what to do, because we've I have patients that have told me that they do the ayahuasca, they do the psilocybin, they do, whatever, acid, ketamine, and on and on. But it'll bring you to a point, but if you don't have someone to help you manage through, I think that is a really, really important point you made. And, because I've also heard that things could go gravely wrong if you don't have someone
Yes.
present that can make this right.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, with my colleague, I know she is really active in, obviously, she's a clinician, um, and she's very active in training others how to be the guides for these ceremonies, and is a huge proponent of making sure that there are clinicians there, that there are people there that can help them do these things safely. Yeah.
What were you going to say, Dr. Terry? Were you going to say something?
Well, I love stories. So
I've got stories.
I want another story that if an outs that made you just go, wow, like where this person, you hear all the stories like Brian Weiss, where this woman kept going back and then she died, and then there's another past life, and he kept going back, and you talked about the sword and from a Viking, that stuff just fascinates me, because especially with the detail that you're like, how do you refute this? What was a story that just shook you to the core that you just went, oh my God, this is like a movie, but this is so detailed. It can't even be a movie. It has to be real.
Yeah. So I'll share that with you. A lot of the other experiences are the people who experience it walk away. Many people experience it, walk away with going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. But from the outside, they've resolved anxiety. I can tell you about a story of a person that had a real serious fear of water, of grief. And, for the most part, they are things that the person, him or herself, go through, and they walk away just blown away by it. The ones that get me, even though I've been doing this for so long, it's still the ones that I like to see the immediate evidence, right? Like the physical evidence. So I'll tell you a cool story that recently happened. Yeah.
I'm so excited.
So,
and by the way, after this, can we take Spencer back to a past life? Because I know he was in the Harry Potter story with spiders.
Oh, yeah.
And I know he was trapped in that cave with the big spider came through because he hates spiders. So he had to have been in that movie with that stuff. So when we're done, let's take Spencer back to a past life, because I know he was covered with spiders and drowning in water with spiders. So
there might be something to that. I'll have to do that.
We'll have to go. But let's go to your story, because I'm like on the edge of my seat.
Okay. All right. This is a cool one.
Oh, cool.
So there was a guy who came in, and he had a few months prior. He's healthy, remarkably, nothing significant. And a few months before he came in to see me, he had a very serious medical event. Suddenly, he had an aneurysm, which he didn't know he had, in his mesenteric artery rupture. He went to the hospital. They immediately intervened. He was in significant pain. He said it. He was never in the military, but he could only imagine that that's what it felt like to be dying and have an open wound on the battlefield, and no one could help him. And he went through that. Once he healed, he was in ICU for 6 days. He was in the hospital for 7. And by the way, they apparently told him that they were going to have to take out parts of his intestines. He would have a colostomy bag for the rest of his life, if he had survived all of that. And on the last day, they're like, you need to come and have a follow-up. But what we notice is that you still have 4 other what's called pseudo aneurysms in this area. Now, I'm going to tell you that I've consulted with all of the doctors that I know in this hospital and outside. And if we had found these before you had a rupture, none of us would have done anything about it because they're pseudo, and the likelihood of them rupturing was extremely low. He had not had any impact. He hadn't been in an accident. No one had hit him in the abdomen. Nobody could figure out why this ruptured. And there were still 3 or 4 others, pseudo tiny, 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 tiny ones, that the risk of surgery, they weren't sure was worth it. They tried to coil them while he was in the hospital, but they were so tiny they couldn't get to them. Okay. So here he is, he's going to these doctors, he's doing follow-up, and the doctors are telling him, we actually don't know what to do with you. As a surgeon, I'm happy to open you up, but every time we open up something, puts you at great risk. It's not worth it because these are tiny little pseudoaneurysms. You don't have a history of high blood pressure or high cholesterol. You didn't have any blunt trauma to the area. Nobody knows what to do. So can we just wait and reassess in 6 months and let's see how you're doing? So he was frustrated and referred to me because I am known for, those mysterious causes, if there's nothing else there, and why not give that a shot? It's not going to hurt. I really am known for that. And so he comes in, he's like, I'd like to do a past life regression. So I did with him what's called quantum healing hypnosis, which is a little different. This is something that Dolores Cannon does. I've been trained by Dolores Cannon as well. And I took him back to a past life, and he found himself riding a horse in war. He was a soldier, but he was like the leader, and he was leading others into battle. And he felt himself just really, he had power, but he felt like just one of the other soldiers. He was someone that absolutely should have and could have been on the side giving directives. But that wasn't the kind of leader he was. He was on a horse leading his men into battle. And then in the session, he goes, I've been hit. And he was hit by 3 arrows in the back of his stomach, in his back that went into his stomach and out the front. Now I know where those pseudoaneurysms are, right? But he's not making any connection to that. He's fully immersed in this experience. By the way, no military experience in this lifetime. I don't think he's even ridden a horse before, but very driven and very, very drawn to Army, Native American, and that came up in the assessment. So I take him through. He sees that he comes off the horse. The horse was hit too. And his men all take him and put him up against the tree. And what was most remarkable to him was being able to see how his soldiers or his men were saddened by this, and they all rallied around him and took care of him. They talked to him, they calmed him, they got him water, and he just wanted to sit there. He wasn't feeling the pain because I took him above it. I'm like, you're going to rise above it. You're going to see it. You're not going to see any pain. You're not going to feel any pain. And he sat there and he wanted to stay there for a while because he felt the love of the soldiers. And he started to cry. And he started to tear up and feel what that felt like to just be so beloved. For him, the most remarkable part of this regression was the connection that he felt among his soldiers. So I take him through, and when he's ready, I have him rise above the scene and go all the way through to the other side. And then we do a little healing and asked for guidance, had him imagine that area of the body completely healing, energetically healing. And I took him all the way through to the other side where he saw his guides. Some people call them master teachers and angels, just wise beings, where he sat and looked back on the purpose of that life and had some incredible realizations. And I won't share any more details, but really important realizations between that lifetime and this lifetime. And then I emerged him. And he awoke. He's always awake because he's talking to me. And he was like, that was incredible. And I said, do you realize where those arrows went in? He hadn't even made the connection. That wasn't as important as the emotion and the feeling of being loved and respected and not questioned, which is something that he has in this lifetime an issue with. And that's where he stood. I said, but hold on a second. I want you to show me right now where those arrows went in. And he a little bit was annoyed with me because he just wanted to talk about the other pieces of it. And he points to the exact areas where those pseudo aneurysms were. I knew in that moment, he didn't, but I knew in that moment that those aneurysms were going to be gone. Now, we all know aneurysms don't go away, right? They're little kinks in like the hose, and they don't just go away unless you surgically go in and coil them or do something with it, right? They don't dissolve. So we ended the session. The hard part of my job is that I have to wait sometimes. I have to wait to see what ends up coming up, and hopefully that they circle back and give me an update. So months later, he went in to have a procedure where they were going to go in and try again now that he was healed. It had been like 8 months or so. Now that he was healed, they were going to go in and coil them and see if they could coil it and do something with it. He told me, he came back, he told me that it took double the amount of time in the procedure, and that there were multiple doctors and surgeons that were in here, and that they came to him almost apologetically, that they even put him under. Because they couldn't find the pseudo aneurysms. There
I
was
swear.
one little micro baby one left up in the area of the spleen. But absolutely, they're not going to touch that. By the way, that's not an area where the arrow went. So it didn't go into that area. But all those other ones, gone. And they were apologetic. They're like, we spent more time in there because we see it on the scan that you have. They're clearly right there. We don't know what happened. And they even said to him, we're going to use this as a teaching model in the case that something like this happens again, because we've never seen anything like this before. So there's an experience. There's something.
She's a ninja. She's a ninja.
I swear to God, if you say his name is William Wallace, I'm going to freak.
Oh, no.
Braveheart.
But it sort of felt like that. It actually felt like when he was talking about that, that's exactly what it sort of, right? But you know what's so interesting is that I'm really focused on the therapeutic realm of it. I don't ask questions like that, but I sometimes wish I could kind of go back, right? And like get more specific details, and see if we can kind of prove. I mean, it was obviously Braveheart, a movie, but you know, like really try to prove some of these things in history.
Okay, I got one more. Sorry, Spencer. Did you ever have somebody that walked in your office just like that had like trauma, and when you did something like that, they turned out to were like a historical figure or somebody that was really like well known, and they had no idea?
I've done so many regressions. I have yet to meet somebody who was famous, but I have had people go back and be part of others who were famous. Like, meaning like, oh gosh. There was one client who was part of like Genghis Khan.
Oh, shut the front door.
Wasn't him, right? But was part of that.
Oh,
I've had people go back. Hey, I've got one for you.
Okay.
I've had people go back to the time of when Jesus was being crucified.
Come on.
And witnessing that. Yeah, witnessing what that was like to
You can't see
watch.
my goosebumps,
Yeah,
but
I got those.
Yeah.
All right, can you tell us that really quick story before we end? Please, 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 please.
It was a long time ago. That's all that I remember. Is, you know, but again, because we're going through this and the details are just unraveling little by little by little. They're, you know, when they get to that part of it's almost like they're like questioning it themselves. Because they're talking. Remember, hypnosis is just a focused state of concentration. It is nothing magical. You're not unconscious. You're just deeply relaxed. And so you're talking. And seeing this person go through that, it's really interesting because you'll see them so deeply relaxed. And then you see a confused look. Wait a second. And you'll hear that. You'll see it. And they're like, I think I'm witnessing Jesus right now. And, you know, and oh my God, oh, this is so horrific to watch. I can't believe that I'm seeing this and I'm seeing, and sometimes it's so painful for them to watch that I'll just say, okay, rise above that, look down on it and see. So I'm absolutely not remembering that particular story. But I can remember what that person's face looked like under hypnosis when they realized the significance of that moment. And then when they emerge and they look at me, I can't tell. So many times I get this question. How do I know that was real? How do I know I wasn't just making that up? I can't tell anybody that I saw this. And so I I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about the themes that come up. What are the things that came up in that lifetime? What are the feelings that you saw? And for that particular person, it was not necessarily religious or confirm anything. For her, what it was learning how to speak up when watching others being crucified, oppressed, marginalized, not allowed to have a voice. For her, she stood back and watched someone she loved and cared about being publicly, killed and shamed, and how that was showing up in this lifetime, and what theme did she need to work through now? How could she now safely use her voice to speak up for these others that she is witnessing going through not on that same level, but how do we extract that theme from that and bring it back into this lifetime so that she can use her voice safely, knowing she's not going to get shunned from her community. She's not going to be killed. It's okay to stand up and have a voice for others that you care so much for, even when the rest of the world feels differently. That's what I remember.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You're a ninja. You're a ninja at this. I cannot get over. Just a quick reference. I read Brian Weiss's book like when it first came out. So we're talking 35, I don't know, however long ago, years ago. But wasn't there a story that earmarked this whole movement into past life where the patient that he had was using a vocabulary or a language that she, in her consciousness, wouldn't have known, but that's how he started realizing she would never know that dialect or language unless she's actually in that moment. Wasn't that?
Yeah, I think
started?
that was that Catherine, and I'm forgetting what the term zine. I forget what it's called, but I've had that a couple times.
Oh, please tell.
Yeah, I have.
Look at you now.
Now you got me into.
So here's a really cool thing, again, because word of mouth, I've become known for this. So people are referred to me from other countries, and I had somebody from South America contact me to do a regression. And she said to me, my English is very poor, but you're highly recommended. I don't really feel safe with a lot of people. Can we just maybe just do the assessment and see if you talk slowly enough, if I can understand you? And is it okay with you if I bring in like a translator? And, I shared with her, I'm like, I don't know. I would really hate for you to make this appointment and it's not successful. And she insisted. She's like, I understand that you're telling me that there may not be success, but I really have got to try this. I want to try it with you. Are you open? And I said, of course I'm open if you are, but I just want you to know. And I had never done it before. So she came in. This was really cool. And I was talking slowly and I was guiding her through. And the translator was really there a little bit more for me than it was for her. She was able to hear me and understand, but she just didn't have the words in English to kind of talk back, and which was totally fine, because the first 20 minutes or so, I'm taking the person into deep hypnosis, getting them into a very focused state of relaxation. You actually don't really even need to hear the words or understand the words, as long as the feeling is there and you're feeling relaxed, and we can access the subconscious mind. So we're doing this. I'm thinking this is really not going to go very well, but let's try. She goes back and she's speaking in her native language, and the translator is telling me, and it's working. It's nice. It's seamless. It's not hurting her process at all. And then all of a sudden, this woman starts speaking fluent English. And what was so funny is that the translator started translating it to Spanish for me, because she didn't realize, and then she stopped and realized for a second, what the woman, there is a recording of that because they were recording it. And I mean, this was like 15 years ago. But she started speaking English perfectly. Perfect. In her experience, she was in the United States in the wild, wild West in the mid 1800s, on the prairie, and explaining it in great detail. Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool? And then when she emerged, she didn't remember it.
No.
And she went back to speaking Spanish fluently.
How
Isn't that cool?
crazy.
So when you see stuff like that, that's the kind of evidence that makes you just go, what? There's something there. Okay, for the skeptic, is it a movie I saw? Is it, maybe it is. Maybe that's the thing that gets you to go back there. But when you see things like this, you don't know it language. You don't know it well enough to speak it like that. Or like I had shared with the medical pieces, right? That stuff you can't refute, right? That's stuff that's like the only intervention was this. And as a result of that intervention, that thing changed. That's hard to dispute. But I have to say, the focus for me, though, really, I mean, those are cool. I know, and I love them. But I really want people to heal, right? And at the heart of it, for me, a past life regression isn't really about proving anything. It's about healing. And healing happens when we are safe enough to remember who we really are. Multidimensional being that can experience many, many different things. And sometimes we can go back in between lives. Sometimes we can go and talk with our higher self or master teachers or guides. And there's just all different ways of being able to access our multidimensional being, that it's not just the brain and the body. There's just so much more.
Wow. I don't even know that. Has this been the most silent we've ever been in a podcast, Terry?
I don't know how silent we were. We were pretty damn giddy at sometimes. I want to fly back and see, what happened to my Navy SEAL Delta body. That's what I want to know.
We need to explore that. That's very interesting.
Before that, maybe you were a sumo wrestler.
Oh, maybe. And then I ate myself, and I'm what's left.
That's funny. That's really funny.
I got to tell you, thank you. You are the best storyteller. I mean, just that, how you create such vivid recollection of what happens and the way you tell it is just riveting. So thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I'll tell you, this is also a first because I don't even want to do the rapid fire questions. I'm
Oh,
good
yay.
to go with that.
Good. I forgot about that part.
You've saved yourself because.
However, now that she said that, I think we should explore this fear of rapid fire questions.
That's a good point.
What in your past life allowed you to fear?
I think she was put under the gun and had
Right.
to answer something.
Yes. True.
Maybe she was in a quiz show in ancient history, and there was like a trap door. If you answered
Right?
it wrong.
Right. Bye-bye. Right. See you next life.
This is fantastic. Oh my God.
Dr. Jen, that was really spectacular. Thank you so much again
you.
Yeah,
for
thank you.
sharing such healing that goes on in your world that we were completely unaware of. And thank you. I hope that provides some answers for some of the people that came up to me this past week, a couple weeks, inquiring about past life regression. Thank you again.
I think it also, hopefully people listening that have had questions in their head with no answers, this is another dimension that people can explore to looking for those unanswered questions. So thank you for providing some wisdom to those who may be lost.
And I appreciate the opportunity to share that, because you're right. This is hopefully this is really helpful for a lot of people to see that there are other ways of healing too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Love you, Jen. Thank you so much for your time.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Cracking Backs podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Cracking Backs Podcast. Catch new episodes every Monday. See you next time.